Today on Art Matters with Mr. Morris, value and form.
Da 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 da. Woo! Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Woo! Da 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 da. Art Matters with Mr. Morris.
Yeah. My artists, welcome back to the studio. Today we're going to be talking about the last of our two elements of design. To recap, lines become shapes, shapes become patterns, patterns become textures, textures can have color, color has value, value shows form. What do I mean when I say color has value? Well, just like before, we don't need color to make a piece of artwork, but value is always going to be there. Even if I take a colored image and I turn it into a black and white image where it's just gray tones, you're still going to see areas that are lighter and darker, and that's really what value deals with. Value has to do with the amount of light or the amount of darkness. Sometimes when I'm showing artwork or creating artwork, I'll refer to things as maybe this is a 1 value and this is a 5 value. The 5 value meaning that I've added a lot to it, it's a lot darker. The 1 value, I didn't add that much, so it's a lot lighter. Value goes from dark to light, from light to dark, all those gray tones in between. In fact, value is so prolific, so much of everything that we see, that no matter what kind of medium you are working with in art, you will be using value, whether you intend to or whether you don't. We don't always notice value because it goes back to that prefrontal cortex. We like to look at the colors, the pretty colors, that's what's important to us. We don't always notice the differences in light and shadow. But I have a couple ways today that we're going to talk about how you can see that light and shadow. One way, the simplest way, squint. When I squint at something and I close my eyelids almost all the way and I'm looking through my eyelashes actually are cutting down the amount of light waves that are coming in, and my brain is picking up more subdued black and white and gray tones than colors. This is a way that a lot of artists will kind of look at something that they're going to draw and they squint and they can see the area that's the lightest, they can see the area that's the dark. Another way, of course, is to do it with a filter or to simply do it digitally. Right now, as you can see, my world around me is now black and white. It was full of color and now it's just black and white. You see, even though I've removed the color, the black and white, it stays. We need value in order to operate in a visual capacity. There are people that are born that don't have the color receptors that make it so they can see the same colors that you and I may see. We refer to these people as having color blindness. Sometimes they can't pick up one type of color, sometimes it's two types of color, and in rare instances they don't pick up any of those colors. Their entire world they see as black and white. We don't need color to operate as human beings. We don't need color to operate in a visual world, but we do need value. And I'm going to prove it to you right now. I'm going to take the value of this room and I'm going to increase the brightness. The brightness, digitally what I'm doing is I'm removing more shadow and I'm adding in more highlight. As I progressively go lighter with the brightness, you'll notice that the dark areas are still kind of lingering, but those kind of light gray areas, they're starting to disappear. As I remove shadow and I get things so that they're in better lighting, I lose all sense of form or three-dimensionality. I can't see that things are three-dimensional anymore because with the pureness of light and no shadow, there's nothing to visually look at. Versus, if I go the opposite side, we're going to now take this image and we're going to go darker and darker and darker and darker. And as I remove light and I decrease the light source, what's happening is I'm removing the light, which means that your eyes aren't able to get information anymore. It's almost like all the lights on, your brain has too much to take in, and with all the lights off, your brain doesn't have anything to take in. We see things as three-dimensional because we can see light and shadow. That really is one of the beautiful parts about your prefrontal cortex, is it is very good at being able to see the differences in light and shadow. It goes back to pattern recognition. Your prefrontal cortex being able to see that difference in light and shadow may have made the difference for your ancestors between life and death. If there was some creature, some predator at the edge of the woods, that difference of light and dark may have made them see past camouflage, past the coloring, and see the actual movement itself. So that gets to our other element of design, our last one, which is form. Color has value. Value shows form. Form is a funny one. It's a little hard to understand, but think of it this way. Value I can see with my eyes. I can look right at it. But form I can feel. I know that this desk is three-dimensional because I can feel it is three-dimensional. Even without looking, form is evident. When we're working with two-dimensional mediums, such as paint or drawing, we're creating the illusion of form with the use of value. One last example. I can make a statue and be blind. I can form that statue together without using my eyes. I can feel the statue out. I can put that statue into a dark room and you can feel that statue also. But as soon as I turn on the lights, you can see that statue and you can see that it has form because you're seeing the value. You're seeing those lights and darks. Value is important when it comes to visual art. It's important when it comes to three-dimensional art. It's important, especially more than anything, I'm going to argue that value may be one of the single most important aspects of two-dimensional art, because without value, we don't have an image. Now, there's different ways and techniques and different mediums in which I create a sense of value. We're going to talk about different ways we can create value in our artwork in a moment. But first, I wanted to test a new segment on you. We haven't really got into a lot of art history yet, so without further ado, I'm going to present our new history segment.
Mr. Morris presents History of Old Farts. So immature. Do it the right way. History of Farts.
Don't even fade to black. Do it the right way.
Art history. The wooden pencil. We love it, we hate it. We use it constantly for drawing, for writing, and for filling in those annoying little bubble tests. The pencil comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes and styles, and it comes in all kinds of finishes, and sometimes it's plastic or metal or wood. But believe it or not, the pencils that we use nowadays are actually a new invention. In fact, if you went back 250 years, pencils like what we use now didn't even exist. This is a stylus. A stylus was first invented by Egyptians, it was used by the Romans, the Babylonians had their own version of a stylus. In any case, it's a long pencil-like object that you would use to press symbols and writing into either wax tablets like what you see here, or into clay blocks. Sometimes the stylus was made with soft metals like silver or lead or gold. In making them out of softer metals, it did make it so they would transfer some of the metal onto a surface. And you would create what are called silver points or gold points or lead points. And if you didn't already know, lead is toxic. It's bad for you. You don't want it. Oh wait, Mr. Morris, my pencil's full of lead. Is my pencil going to kill me?
La 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 la.
The simple answer is no, it won't. Because your pencil's not full of lead, it's full of graphite. This here shiny, shiny rock, it's actually a piece of graphite. And graphite is what is used in our modern pencils. Everything in our world is made of elements. On the periodic table of elements, lead is its own element, whereas carbon is its own element, and graphite, well, it's made of carbon. In the 16th century, a large deposit of pure, solid graphite was discovered in Borrowdale, England. When they first took a look at this material, they thought it was some sort of like black lead or something like that. They didn't think that it was a type of carbon. So they called it plumbago, which is derived from plumbum, which is Latin for lead. This plumbum, or lead, that they were digging up, which was actually graphite, was amazing for a lot of different things. For one, it was great for locks, lubricating them, lubricating gears and mechanical pieces. It was good for protecting certain types of metal. It was good for making slick surfaces, and it was good for leaving marks on paper. The problem is that it's dirty. It gets everywhere. It's super soft and it's wonderful, but it gets all over your hands and it's hard to control. So people started kind of strapping little chunks of this lead in between two pieces of wood, and they were starting to kind of use them like what we use pencils like today. So for the better part of human history, we used all kinds of things, but we weren't using graphite. And even when we were using graphite, it didn't look like a pencil. Well, that is until the year 1795, and America has already won its independence from Great Britain. There's a new leader on the playing field of Europe by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte. War was brewing all throughout Europe, and there was a shortage of graphite. In fact, a lot of trade routes to get graphite were blocked. So a scientist by the name of Nicolas Conte, who, by the way, served in the army for Napoleon Bonaparte, created what we now call the modern pencil. Conte was charged with the task of finding a way to make it so the graphite would extend further. They wouldn't need as much of the graphite since the source of it was blocked. But Conte also was trying to find a way to make it so the graphite was more controllable, that the graphite wouldn't get all over your hands. It's very hard for an artist to use it to do lights and darks. And it just so happens that Nicolas Conte, he was an artist. He was also a balloonist. So I guess he was a lot of things. But this army officer in Napoleon Bonaparte's army went through and he invented what we call the pencil grading system. Conte found that by taking graphite, grinding it into a powder, and mixing it in with specific amounts of clay, he was able to control the hardness of that graphite. By controlling the hardness, he could also make it darker or lighter. If you've ever seen an artist set of pencils, there's a whole bunch of pencils in there and they all look a little bit different. Well, this is why. Because they all have different hardnesses or different values. You see, if you look on the side of your regular writing pencil, you're going to see HB, which stands for hard and black. And HB2, the 2 is in reference to how wide the lead, or I should say the graphite, is inside of the pencil. Most of the pencils that we use nowadays are going to be HB number 2 pencil. However, if I go higher up on the scale to an H stands for hard, 2H stands for 2 degrees of hardness, 3H stands for 3 degrees of hardness, and it goes all the way up to 9H. The harder the pencil graphite is, the lighter the line it will make. Going in the opposite direction, the higher the number, followed by the letter B, the darker and softer the pencil will be. A 9H pencil barely will ever need to be sharpened, but a 9B pencil, woo, they aren't really useful in a pencil form. Usually you still have to get them in a stick form. An HB pencil does a wonderful job for an artist as far as capturing a wide range of light and dark values in your drawings. However, if you ever get a chance to get a hold of other pencils that are in different hardnesses, you can see that they can help expand what your range is. You can go lighter and you can go even darker than what an HB pencil is able to do. I recommend to most artists to use a 2H, an HB, a 2B, and then once in a while a 4B. The harder pencils are great for doing architecture work and different things like that, but for fine art I haven't personally found a lot of uses for them. Of course, if we're talking about pencils, I should mention this horrible man right here, Hyman Lipman. I call him horrible because this is the inventor of the rubber eraser, the one that you so lovingly like to use on the backs of your pencils. Just make your mistakes and move on with it. Don't use your erasers. I like to think that Conte And Hyman used to have massive battles over the fact that one of them created the pencil and the other one slapped an eraser on it. But
how dare you sully my invention of the pencil with your horrible pink eraser?
I don't think they were alive at the same time. It should be noted, colored pencils are not actually graphite. They are a completely different material. They're usually filled up with a pigment and waxes, occasionally different kinds of oils or chalks. So they are not normal graphite pencils. It should also be noted that the reason why a lot of pencil sharpeners have 2 barrels instead of 1 is the wider barrel is meant for softer leads, whereas the thinner barrel is meant for harder leads. You can have a longer, sharper pencil if it's an H pencil than you can if it's a B pencil.
So what's the right pencil for you in your artwork and your artistic endeavors?
The lumber pencil or carpenter's pencil is a type of pencil that mimics kind of the oldest versions of pencils the most. It has a flat, wide tip, and usually you have to sharpen it with a razor blade. However, they do have sharpeners that will sharpen them, and mostly they're used for what I just said, marking lumber. However, as an artist, they can give you some really cool line variation, and they tend to have a very smooth graphite, about on par with a 2B. And I know many of my artists out there love using their mechanical pencils. I'm going to point something out. A mechanical pencil was not made for artwork. It was made for writing. They are not intended to be used for artwork because they do a terrible job at shading. So if you really love the fact that you don't have to sharpen the pencil and that you can just load up the graphite into it, I have a great alternative for you instead of using a mechanical pencil. This is a lead holder, and a lead holder holds a piece of graphite that's as big around as a number 2 pencil's lead is. What's really nice about these is they work just like a mechanical pencil, but the graphite piece that's in them is much wider. You do need a special sharpener for them, but it's really not that big of a deal, and I have had plenty of times where I don't have a sharpener and I just sharpen the pencil by basically shading with it on its side. You can get the graphite in all kinds of different hardnesses, so you can get a 4B or a 6B and you don't have to worry about sharpening them. Really, if you're going to get into doing art with a pencil, a clutch pencil is the way to go. I can assure you of that. These are wonderful, wonderful inventions. Well, I know I've got to get the lead out and wrap up this presentation. I need to really get to the point of pencils and make sure that you are in line with what I'm talking about. Okay. Pencils, the history, I just took you through it. Oh yeah. Thank you for watching another episode of Art History.
Today we talked about the element of art that we call value and its importance. We talked about how value is in everything, and it is extremely important to understand and to master as an artist in order to make convincing two-dimensional artworks and powerful three-dimensional artworks. We talked about the history of the pencil and graphite and why we call it lead. We talked about the HB pencil grading system so you can better use pencils to create that sense of light and dark with value. And last, we talked about the element of art, our last one, form. And we talked about how form depends on value for us to see it, but with our eyes shut, we can feel form in 3 dimensions. My artists, I cannot stress to you how important it is to learn how to master the sense of value in your artwork. I cannot tell you how important it is to start getting that down, to experiment, to play around with it. In fact, that's going to be our main focus for the rest of this course. Is just going to be in you learning how to manipulate the mediums that we use in order to show a sense of light and dark, in order to show value. Hopefully you found some value in this lesson. Until next time, my artists, remember, be kind to yourselves and keep on making art. I'm Mr. Morris. Have a wonderful day.